If you ever want to get the FBI back to a law enforcement organization, you need to end this domestic intelligence program completely.
Do you guys have a sense, considering that what you've talked about here? Do you have a sense that the incoming administration is going to be able to do anything about this? Because I understand it's difficult to make changes in Washington, D.C., especially on the bureaucrat level. There are people that, as soon as you fire someone, they're going to sue. And I've heard people articulate an idea that what's going to have is you're going to have people get fired, they'll sue, and it'll have to go to the Supreme Court. And the question is going to be, does the executive, as in the president, have the authority to fire people in the executive branch that are not doing their job? Do you think that there's going to be that the executive has the ability to make changes that are necessary, or people like Kash Patel, will they be able to, or is it going to have to take going through the court system all the way up to the Supreme Court and having the Supreme Court decide, which hopefully the makeup of the court would say, yes, the executive does have the authority to decide who does and does not work for them. But that's
There's
not guaranteed.
What's your
sense?
Parts to that. So Senator Adam Schiff from California already tried to cut Kash Patel off at the knees, recognizing that he plans on making some structural changes and pointing out that, we might not want to do that in view of this rise of Islamic terrorism now coming back to the United States. So they're already just laying out that narrative, like no structural changes, Kash. Furthermore, it would take Congress to do away with the domestic intelligence program. Now, could the executive branch do something to kind of zero that out in terms of allocation of resources and through the DNI? Yes, it could happen, but
it would only be about funding, and then an administration that supports the idea after Donald Trump or two administrations later would come back and say, these are still laws on the books, and we're just going to go ahead and start doing this again.
So consider this. George already told you where the cheat code is. The analysts that work for the FBI don't answer to the FBI. That's not the master. The master comes from the Office of Director of National Intelligence. So they are serving in a role and being paid by the FBI. Actually, we don't get paid by the FBI. You get paid by the Department of Agriculture. All my checks came in from Department of Ag through the National Finance Center. It's so weird.
Super secret.
It's super secret. And then you go and you're like, hey, I work for the FBI. And they're like, but your pay stub says the Department of Agriculture. And you're like, I know, and I can't get them to fix it.
You got to have a G19 clearance for that.
Apparently you got to have fake clearance.
G19.
So listen, the people, they're getting paid by one organization. They are answering to another. We can fix that problem. Mm-hmm. Kash Patel can fix that problem. The answer is like, hey, Tulsi, hey, high five. I'm going to give you all of the analytical core that's been sitting here. And they can continue to co-locate. They just don't work for the FBI anymore. Let's remove that chunk. And as it stands right now, and I think George can validate this, because of that IPM, because of the way that they just do term papers, essentially an analyst in the FBI writes term papers for a living. What's their quota per year?
3. The DNI said they have to write 3 a year. It was while I was with the Bureau, they said, these other intelligence agencies are writing X number of products per year. You're not. Your analysts need to produce at least 3 per year of what's called finished intelligence products.
This is analysis of raw intel in a way that means something to somebody. Okay? Is a domain awareness program, is that, if you wrote a domain awareness bulletin, is that finished?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing that I came forward with that showed that they were targeting Catholics in Richmond, Virginia, that's one. So it's a long form term paper with a bunch of different little footnotes in it. It has some sourcing, which should be better than the Southern Poverty Law Center, but in that case it was not. And so you show all the things. It should be better than the Atlantic, but it was not. So they write up this long term paper. That's one of 3. If you get 3 in the year, then you're going to be green in that metric. So you're good to go as an intel analyst. Well, you can write term papers for somebody else, because as an FBI agent, when I was doing that job, I didn't need your term paper. It never did anything for a case I worked. Not one. Ever. It didn't predicate a case. It didn't give me an idea of what my subjects were involved in. It's non-investigative work. It's analytical work. So get rid of those people. The second problem is the executives. And the question is, can we fire them outright? And can you do something with them? And without giving away a lot of strategy, because I have some ideas for people and I've shared some of them, right? Sure. What you do is you find some people that have done objectively wrong things and violated either federal policy or law that the agency holds them accountable to. And you hold them accountable to that. Some of that means prosecution. Some of it means removal from your job. You suspend them immediately. You investigate them, give them the opportunity to resign or to retire, which a lot of them will. And then they're going to be outside the agency's purview. Now you have some spots in some places in the country. And J. Edgar Hoover was really good at doing this back in the day. He was kind of a gangster. Not kind of, really. He was a gangster. So, like, he was known to dress like cross-dress. That was like a well-known thing about J. Edgar Hoover. So people get upset about it. And you look at it and be like, no, the guy dressed up in women's clothing, moved around in the space. It is what it is. So long and short of it is, historically, that was a thing. I also think it's kind of funny. He was like the first LGBTQIA plus guy in the government, and he used to hunt them. He was a trendsetter. So before his time. Long and short of it is, you had this moment that what he would do is he would get rid of people that he thought were disrespecting the Bureau, that caused problems. And he would move them to places like Alaska. He would move them to Montana. He would move them to wherever they wanted to go.
Sounds like good.
Those are places we want to go. He would move them to places that they shouldn't be in. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so they would go, oh, I want to move to, Miami. And he was like, cool. Like, looks like you're going to South Dakota. And so he would send them out there to places they didn't want to be. And then they would go, well, rather than take that move, I'm going to resign. And that is an opportunity to not have to pay a bunch of lawsuits.
Yeah.
Because why would you want to pay a bunch of lawsuits if you don't have to? You just give people an opportunity to make the right decision for the country and for the organization.
And that's something that I've heard. I'm not sure actually who was touting the idea, but getting the bureaucracies out of Washington, D.C. instead of having them all.
You should totally decentralize it.
You should have the Department of Agriculture should be, based in Iowa or based in Nebraska, in Lincoln or something like that, right?
They hire people that live inside the D.C. Beltway who have D.C. Beltway attitudes.
Yep.
And that group of people is pretty small, and they mostly haven't experienced America.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Like if you look around and you don't know where your food comes from because you live in Jersey, and maybe there's some food in Jersey, but not enough. If you live in New York City and it comes from the grocery store or a bodega and you have no idea, people in Washington, D.C. oftentimes have zero clue how the rest of America operates. And it's really, really different.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.